Hello students, I hope you're having a great day and welcome back to the channel. In this video, you'll be taking our second full and complete TOEFL iBT practice test. It covers the reading, listening, speaking, and writing sections. And as always, if you'd like answers with explanations to the entire test, simply click on the link in the description below to download the free PDF. Alright students, I wish you the best of luck. Let's get started. You'll have 2 reading passages, and each passage will be about 700 words long. You'll have 10 questions to answer for each passage, and you'll have a total of 36 minutes to complete the entire reading practice test, which gives you about 18 minutes per passage. Now, I always recommend that you spend about 3 minutes to quickly read the passage. Don't try and memorize the passage, just get a brief overview and understanding of the passage. That gives you 15 minutes to answer the questions, which means you have about 90 seconds per question. Now, keep in mind on the actual test, you will be in control of your time, which means you can spend more or less time on each question. But for the purposes of this video, I want you to practice your timing, which means you'll have 3 minutes to read the passage and 90 seconds to answer each question. Before we get started, note that there are going to be 2 timers on your screen. The master timer, which tells you how much time you have left for the entire reading test, and then a smaller timer, which will tell you how much time you have for each slide. Are you taking the TOEFL iBT soon? Then I invite you to take our course. Unlock the TOEFL iBT Mastering the Test online preparation course. It's a fully online, self-paced course that comprehensively prepares you for every section of the TOEFL iBT. It has engaging readings, expert video lessons, interactive quizzes, proven strategies, hundreds of practice questions, 2 full-length online practice tests, and individualized feedback. With this course, you'll have everything you need to ace the TOEFL iBT. For more information, the link to the course page is in the description below. Now keep in mind, there will be 5 audio recordings, 3 academic lectures, each of them 4 to 5 minutes long, and each lecture will be followed by 6 questions. Then there are 2 university-based conversations, each of them about 2 to 3 minutes long, and followed by 5 questions per conversation. ETS says it'll take you about 36 minutes, but most students take between 40 and 55 minutes. And don't forget to take detailed notes for each lecture and each conversation. Now, there will be a timer on your screen for each question, but keep in mind that on the actual test, you will be in control of your time. But for the purposes of this video, I want you to practice your timing. So you'll have 40 seconds per question.
Okay, everyone. We've spent the last few sessions talking about the classification of clouds, cumulus, stratus, cirrus, and the atmospheric stability conditions that create them. But today, I want to shift gears and tackle a question that might seem simple on the surface, but is actually quite complex. How exactly do clouds release water? In other words, how do we get from a fluffy cloud floating in the sky to actual raindrops falling on your head? You might think, well, gravity just pulls the water down, right? But it's not that straightforward. First, we need to remember that clouds are made of microscopic water droplets, or ice crystals. These things are tiny, about 10 to 20 micrometers in diameter. To give you some perspective, a typical raindrop is about 2,000 micrometers. You would need to combine roughly 1 million cloud droplets to make a single raindrop heavy enough to fall to the ground without evaporating. So the big question is, how do these tiny droplets grow that big? It starts with something we call cloud condensation nuclei, or CCNs. These are tiny particles in the air, dust, salt, smoke, that water vapor condenses onto. Without these particles, you'd need a relative humidity of several 100% for droplets to form, which basically never happens in the real world. Now, once we have droplets, there are 2 primary mechanisms that turn them into precipitation. Which one occurs depends largely on the temperature of the cloud. The first mechanism is called the collision coalescence process. This happens in warm clouds where the temperature is above freezing throughout the cloud. This is typical in the tropics. In these clouds, some droplets form on giant condensation nuclei like large sea salt particles and get bigger than their neighbors. As these larger droplets fall, they collide with smaller, slower droplets in their path. If they collide and stick, that's the coalescence part, they grow larger. As they get bigger, they fall faster, sweeping up even more droplets. It's a snowball effect, or I guess, a raindrop effect in this case. But most of the rain that falls over the United States and mid-latitudes comes from the second mechanism, which happens in cold clouds. This is the Bergeron process, named after the Swedish meteorologist Tor Bergeron. In cold clouds, you have a mix of supercooled water droplets, liquid water that is below freezing but hasn't frozen yet, and ice crystals. Here's the fascinating physics part. The saturation vapor pressure over ice is lower than it is over water. I know that sounds technical, so think of it this way. Water molecules are more attracted to the ice crystal than they are to the liquid droplet. So the water molecules literally evaporate from the liquid droplets and deposit onto the ice crystals. The ice crystals grow at the expense of the water droplets. Once these ice crystals get heavy enough, they fall. As they fall through warmer air near the ground, they melt and become rain. So believe it or not, even on a hot summer day in the Midwest, that rain likely started its journey as snow high up in the atmosphere. It starts with something we call cloud condensation nuclei, or CCNs. These are tiny particles in the air, dust, salt, smoke, that water vapor condenses onto. Without these particles, you'd need a relative humidity of several 100% for droplets to form, which basically never happens in the real world. It starts with something we call cloud condensation nuclei, or CCNs. These are tiny particles in the air, dust, salt, smoke, that water vapor condenses onto. Without these particles, you'd need a relative humidity of several 100% for droplets to form, which basically never happens in the real world.
Good afternoon, everyone. We've been looking at the major agents of socialization: family, media, peers. Today I want to zoom in on one of the most powerful institutional agents, the school. Specifically, I want to look at how different educational structures reflect different societal values. We're going to contrast the dominant traditional model with the Montessori method, not just as teaching styles but as sociological systems. Let's start with the traditional model, which most of us are very familiar with. If you walk into a traditional classroom anywhere in the world, what do you see? Rows of desks facing the front, a teacher standing at a whiteboard, and students all working on the same task at the same time. Sociologically, this design isn't accidental. It emerged largely during the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century. The goal wasn't just literacy, it was to prepare children for factory work. You needed a workforce that could follow instructions, handle repetitive tasks, and adhere to strict time schedules, hence the bell ringing every 45 minutes to signal a change in activity. In this model, the teacher is the active authority figure, the sage on the stage, pouring knowledge into passive students. Now let's pivot to the Montessori method. This was developed by Dr. Maria Montessori in Italy in the early 1900s. The physical environment here is radically different. There are no rows of desks. Instead, you have open floor space, low shelves, and distinct workstations. And here is the core sociological difference: the hierarchy is flattened. In a Montessori classroom, the teacher is not the focal point. They are often referred to as a guide. Their job isn't to lecture but to prepare the environment. The theory here is constructivism, the idea that children construct their own knowledge through interaction with the world rather than having it transmitted to them. You'll see mixed age groups, say 3 to 6-year-olds in one room. This mimics a family structure more than a factory structure. The younger children learn from the older ones, and the older children reinforce their knowledge by teaching the younger ones. This encourages collaboration rather than the competition you often see in traditional grading systems. So, why does this matter to us as sociologists? Because these systems produce different kinds of social actors. The traditional model tends to produce adults who are comfortable with hierarchy, external rewards, like grades or salaries, and standardization. The Montessori model aims to produce adults who are self-directed, intrinsically motivated, and collaborative. Neither is inherently bad, but they serve different functions for different types of societies. As we move into a post-industrial, information economy, we are actually seeing a shift back towards some of these Montessori ideals: autonomy and creativity, even within public education. Rows of desks facing the front, a teacher standing at a whiteboard, and students all working on the same task at the same time. Sociologically, this design isn't accidental. It emerged largely during the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century. The goal wasn't just literacy, it was to prepare children for factory work. You needed a workforce that could follow instructions, handle repetitive tasks, and adhere to strict time schedules, hence the bell ringing every 45 minutes to signal a change in activity. Rows of desks facing the front, a teacher standing at a whiteboard, and students all working on the same task at the same time. Sociologically, this design isn't accidental. It emerged largely during the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century. The goal wasn't just literacy, it was to prepare children for factory work. You needed a workforce that could follow instructions, handle repetitive tasks, and adhere to strict time schedules, hence the bell ringing every 45 minutes to signal a change in activity.
Good morning, class. When we look at the history of art, we usually talk about paint, marble, or bronze. But today I want to talk about a moment in 1839 that completely changed how humans represent reality. I'm talking, of course, about the invention of the daguerreotype. Now it's important to understand that the invention of photography wasn't a single, eureka, moment by one person. It was a race. But the man who crossed the finish line first, at least in terms of public recognition, was Louis Daguerre in France. Before 1839, if you wanted a picture of yourself, you had to hire a painter. This was expensive and time-consuming. Only the wealthy could afford to be remembered. Daguerre changed that. So what exactly is a daguerreotype? It's very different from the photos you have on your phone, or even the film photos your parents might have taken. Technically speaking, a daguerreotype is a direct positive process. Here is how they made one. You take a copper plate and coat it with a thin layer of silver. You then polish it until it looks like a mirror. Seriously, it has to be flawless. Then you expose this plate to iodine fumes, which makes the surface light sensitive. You put it in the camera, expose it to light, and this is the dangerous part. You develop the image over hot mercury vapor. The result is a highly detailed image on a metal surface. Because it's on silver, it has a magical reflective quality. Depending on how you hold it to the light, it shifts between a positive image and a negative one. But there were significant limitations to this technology. First, there is no negative. In modern film photography, or 20th century photography, you have a negative strip that allows you to print thousands of copies of the same photo. The daguerreotype is a unique object. If you have a daguerreotype of your great-grandfather, that is the only one in existence. It cannot be reproduced. Second, let's talk about exposure time. Early on, the plate had to be exposed to light for several minutes, sometimes up to 15 or 20 minutes. Imagine sitting perfectly still for 15 minutes. You can't smile because holding a smile for that long causes your facial muscles to twitch, which would blur the photo. This is actually why people in old 19th century portraits look so serious or grim. They weren't necessarily unhappy. They were just trying not to move. To help with this, photographers actually used iron head clamps, hidden behind the subject, to keep their heads rigid. Despite these drawbacks, the daguerreotype was a sensation. It was called the mirror with a memory. It democratized portraiture. Suddenly, the middle class could afford to have their likeness preserved. It forced painters to ask an existential question. If a machine can capture reality perfectly, what is the point of painting? And that question. Well, that eventually led us to Impressionism and modern art, but that is a topic for next week. First, there is no negative. In modern film photography, or 20th century photography, you have a negative strip that allows you to print thousands of copies of the same photo. The daguerreotype is a unique object. If you have a daguerreotype of your great-grandfather, that is the only one in existence. It cannot be reproduced. First, there is no negative. In modern film photography, or 20th century photography, you have a negative strip that allows you to print thousands of copies of the same photo. The daguerreotype is a unique object. If you have a daguerreotype of your great-grandfather, that is the only one in existence. It cannot be reproduced.
Hi, excuse me. I was told to come here to ask about room assignments. I'm a transfer student. I'll be starting next semester, and I'm a little overwhelmed by the options on the website.
You're in the right place. Welcome to the university. I know the website can be a bit dense. Do you have your student ID number?
Yes.
It's 809442.
Okay, I see your profile here. Since you're a transfer student, you actually have priority status for on-campus housing, which is great. Have you thought about what kind of environment you prefer?
Well, that's the thing. At my old school, I lived in a really loud dormitory, and it was impossible to study. I'm a chemistry major, so I have a lot of lab reports to write. I really need somewhere quiet. Also, I prefer to cook my own meals if possible. The dining hall food isn't really for me.
I see. Okay, knowing that, we can probably rule out the freshman quadrangles. Those are traditional dorms. 2 students to a room, communal bathrooms down the hall, and very social. They tend to be lively.
Lively sounds like noisy. I'd like to avoid that.
Understood. So, based on your need for a kitchen and a quieter space, you have 2 main options. The first is University Village. These are apartment-style units. You'd have a private bedroom, but you share a kitchen and living room with 3 other students.
That sounds perfect.
It is popular. However, because it's the most requested option, there is currently a wait list. We usually tell students there's about a 50% chance of getting off the wait list before the semester starts.
Oh,
That's a bit risky. I don't want to arrive and have nowhere to stay. What's the second option?
The second option is Riverview Hall. It was just renovated last year. These are suite-style rooms. So, you have a roommate in your bedroom, and the 2 of you share a bathroom with the 2 people in the adjoining room.
Does it have a kitchen?
Not inside the unit, no. However, and this is the part most students miss, Riverview has a large communal kitchen on every floor, not just one for the whole building. It's rarely crowded. Plus, Riverview is designated as a 24-hour quiet zone.
A quiet zone? How is that enforced?
We have resident advisors, or RAs, who monitor the noise level strictly. If you get 3 strikes for noise, you are removed from the hall. It attracts serious students, mostly upperclassmen in engineering or science majors.
That actually sounds really good. I don't mind a roommate if the general atmosphere is quiet. And if the floor kitchen is clean, I can work with that. Is there a price difference between the village apartments and Riverview?
Yes, because the village apartments have private bedrooms and internal kitchens. They are about $800 more per semester than Riverview.
Okay. I think Riverview is the safer bet for me. I'd rather secure a spot now than gamble on the waitlist.
Smart choice. I can tag your file for Riverview right now. You just need to log into the portal tonight and pay the housing deposit to finalize it.
I'll do that tonight then. Thank you so much for your help today.
It is popular. However, because it's the most requested option, there is currently a wait list. We usually tell students there's about a 50% chance of getting off the wait list before the semester starts.
Oh,
That's a bit risky. I don't want to arrive and have nowhere to stay. What's the second option?
It is popular. However, because it's the most requested option, there is currently a wait list. We usually tell students there's about a 50% chance of getting off the wait list before the semester starts.
oh,
That's a bit risky. I don't want to arrive and have nowhere to stay. What's the second option?
Hi, Mr. Peterson. Do you have a minute? I'm having a really hard time with the online registration portal. It keeps giving me an error message, and my registration window closes in 2 hours. I'm starting to panic a little.
Take a deep breath, Sarah, and have a seat. The system can be a bit finicky during peak registration times. What specific error message are you seeing?
Well, I'm trying to sign up for Modern European History. It's History 405, but every time I click Add, it says restriction error, prerequisite not met. But that doesn't make sense. I took Intro to European History last year and got an A.
Let me pull up your transcript on my screen. Hey, I see History 101. You definitely completed that. I see the issue.
Is it a computer glitch?
Not exactly. History 405 is an upper division seminar. While you did take the introductory course, the department recently updated the requirements. You now need 2 lower-level history classes before you can take the 400-level ones. You're missing History 201.
Oh no. Seriously? That wasn't in the catalog when I arrived here. Does that mean I can't take the class? I really need it for my minor.
Well, usually the computer is strict about this. However, since you are a senior and the requirements changed after you declared your minor, we might be able to get an exception.
That would be a lifesaver.
I can't do it from my computer though. You'll need to get an override permission code directly from the professor, Dr. Evans. If you email him and explain that you're under the old catalog requirements, he should be willing to sign you in.
Okay, I'll email him right now.
Just make sure to put registration urgent in the subject line so he sees it quickly. Now, looking at your schedule, if you get into that class, that puts you at 18 credit hours for the semester.
Yeah. I want to graduate a semester early, so I'm trying to stack my schedule.
I see. Look, frankly, I wouldn't recommend that. History 405 is a writing-intensive course, usually a 20-page paper at the end. Combined with your other classes, you might be spreading yourself too thin.
I didn't realize the workload was that heavy.
It is. I'd suggest dropping that elective art class you have on Tuesdays. That brings you down to 15 credits, which is much more manageable, and you'll still graduate on time.
You're probably right. I don't want my GPA to drop just because I tried to rush. I'll drop the art class and email Dr. Evans for the code.
Sounds like a plan. Let me know if he doesn't get back to you by noon. Look, frankly, I wouldn't recommend that. History 405 is a writing-intensive course, usually a 20-page paper at the end. Combined with your other classes, you might be spreading yourself too thin. Look, frankly, I wouldn't recommend that. History 405 is a writing-intensive course, usually a 20-page paper at the end. Combined with your other classes, you might be spreading yourself too thin.
There are 4 tasks. With task 1, you'll read a question and then you'll speak. With tasks 2 and 3, you'll read a passage, listen to an audio recording, and then speak. In task 4, you'll listen to an audio recording and then speak. Pay close attention to the timer and take detailed notes during listening portions. You will be asked a question about a familiar topic. After you hear the question, you will have 15 seconds to prepare and 45 seconds to speak. Some parents believe that teenagers under the age of 18 should not have access to social media apps. Do you agree or disagree, and why? In this task, you'll read an announcement from the university, and then you'll hear two students discussing the same topic. Your task will be to answer a question by combining information from both the reading passage and the conversation. Once the question is presented, you'll have 30 seconds to prepare your response, followed by 60 seconds to present your answer orally. You'll have 45 seconds to read the university announcement. Begin reading now. Now listen to a conversation between two students.
Hey, did you see the university's new announcement? Campus vendors won't be giving out plastic bags anymore.
Yeah, I saw it. Honestly, I don't know how I feel about it. Isn't that just going to be inconvenient?
Maybe a little at first, but I think it's a great step. Less plastic means less trash around campus and fewer bags ending up in the creek or blowing across the quad.
I get that, but sometimes I just forget to bring a reusable bag. What am I supposed to do then?
You could keep one in your backpack or get one of those foldable ones. They hardly take up space.
I guess. I just think it's annoying that they're forcing it on everyone.
I see your point, but sometimes real change needs a little push. Plus, we all benefit from a cleaner, greener campus in the long run.
Maybe you're right. I'll give it a try.
The woman expresses her opinion about the university's announcement concerning plastic bags. Explain her opinion and the reasons for having that opinion. In this task, you will read a brief passage about an academic topic, and then listen to a lecture on the same subject. Afterward, you'll answer a question based on the information from the reading passage and the lecture. Once you hear the question, you'll have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak. You have 45 seconds to read the passage. Begin reading now. Now, listen to the lecture.
Let's take a closer look at Claude Lévi-Strauss and his influential role in structural anthropology, particularly through his analysis of myth. Lévi-Strauss argued that myths are far more than just stories or folklore. They are essential expressions of the universal structures of human thought. He believed that beneath the surface differences of myths from various cultures lies a common underlying structure. Myths, according to Lévi-Strauss, help societies resolve these oppositions by offering symbolic resolutions, even if the contradictions themselves cannot be solved in real life. Importantly, Lévi-Strauss viewed myth as a kind of language. Each myth is like a sentence, and the individual elements within the myth, the characters, events, and motifs function like words or phrases. He analyzed these elements in terms of how they relate to one another across different versions of the same myth, a method he called mythemes. Ultimately, Lévi-Strauss believed that by studying myths, we can uncover the deep structures of the human mind, structures that are shared across all cultures.
Using information from the reading and lecture, explain Claude Lévi-Strauss's perspective on myths and how myths reflect the universal structures of human thought. In this task, you will listen to a part of a lecture. After listening, you will be asked to summarize key information from the lecture. After you hear the question, you will have 20 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak. Now, listen to the lecture.
Bioluminescence is the emission of light resulting from a chemical reaction that occurs within an organism. This reaction typically involves a light-emitting molecule called luciferin and an enzyme called luciferase. When luciferin reacts with oxygen, often with the help of luciferase, light is produced, usually without generating heat, which makes it highly efficient compared to man-made light sources. Bioluminescence has evolved independently in many different species across the tree of life, including marine organisms like jellyfish, plankton, and deep-sea fish, as well as some insects like fireflies, and even a few fungi and bacteria. It's most commonly seen in the ocean, where over 75% of deep-sea creatures are capable of producing light. But what is the biological purpose of bioluminescence? It varies depending on the organism. In some species, it serves as a form of predator avoidance, such as the sudden flash of light used to startle a predator or distract it while the organism escapes. In others, it's used for predation, like the anglerfish that uses a glowing lure to attract prey in the dark ocean depths. Bioluminescence can also serve as a tool for communication, especially in mating. Fireflies, for example, use specific light patterns to identify and attract mates of their own species.
Summarize the main points of the lecture, explaining how bioluminescence works and the different purposes it serves in various organisms. There are 2 tasks. With task 1, you'll read a passage, listen to a lecture on the same subject, and then write your essay. In task 2, you'll read an online classroom discussion board, and then write your response to the conversation. I advise that you take a screenshot of the reading in the first task because on the actual TOEFL iBT test, you are allowed to view the reading at any time while you're writing your essay. However, you do need to take detailed notes during the listening portion in the first task because you're only allowed to listen to the lecture 1 time. Keep the video playing for the whole test so you can accurately track your time. For this task, you will read a passage and then listen to a lecture on the same topic. After the lecture, you will have 20 minutes to prepare and write your response. You have 3 minutes to read the passage. Begin reading now.
In reflecting on the reading, the text does a strong job explaining that race, historically, has been a social construct rather than a biological category. The origins of race tied to colonialism and exploitation are crucial for understanding its societal role, and I agree with the point that genetic research has debunked race as a meaningful biological category. Studies show that genetic differences are gradual and continuous, not neatly divided into racial groups. However, I'd like to emphasize that traits like skin color, although part of a continuous spectrum, do have adaptive significance. Skin color variations evolved in response to environmental factors such as UV radiation, but these traits don't form rigid categories, reinforcing that race isn't a reliable biological framework. While genetic differences do exist between populations, these differences don't map onto race-based classifications. Traits like lactose tolerance or malaria resistance reflect adaptation, not separate races. Genetic research has demonstrated that race does not correspond to discrete genetic boundaries, and this is important when considering how genetics contributes to human diversity. Finally, the text rightly highlights race's social significance, despite its lack of biological foundation. Race influences experiences of inequality and health disparities, which are deeply connected to social realities. While race doesn't directly cause these disparities, social, economic, and environmental factors contribute significantly to health outcomes, especially in fields like medical anthropology. The reading provides a solid foundation for understanding race in biological anthropology. While race may not have a biological basis, its impact on social realities is undeniable, and we must consider both the biological and social aspects of human diversity.
This task presents an online discussion board similar to those you will encounter as a university student. You have 10 minutes to read the discussion board and respond accordingly. Well done, students, on completing that full TOEFL iBT practice test. Don't forget to download the PDF, which has the answers and explanations, so you can see how you performed. Hey everyone, thank you for watching and for spending part of your day with me. If you found this lesson useful, please give it a like, share it, or leave a comment, as your engagement truly helps the channel grow and encourages YouTube to share our videos with more learners just like you. And if you'd like to take your support a bit further to help us continue creating free learning content, you can check out the thanks button at the bottom of this video, or you can visit our Patreon page. Until next time, students, keep exploring, keep learning, and let the world be your classroom.